Hey, today what we're going to talk about is kind of developing a teaching or a coaching philosophy. We want to view teaching and coaching as very similar types of deals. You know, coaching is teaching, and teaching is basically just getting people to learn a content area, develop a skill, and later on master that skill. So when we're developing this different philosophy, a couple things we want to be able to address in that philosophy, no matter what you're doing, whether it's teaching in the classroom, whether you're teaching out on the sport field. You want to address your background, where you develop different ideas and views, maybe some experience with your studies, personal experiences with people. Address your background, ID what your true framework is on how you establish like a principles-based approach, so you're not just kind of stabbing and handling situations in an isolated fashion, but you're going to talk about how your framework or your generic principles govern most of your decisions. We'll call that like a decision-making model. You definitely want to touch a little bit on assessment, how you're going to assess an athlete, how you're going to assess a student against themselves and then against the normal standards that may be in that area. You want to talk about diversity and inclusion a little bit, and then we want to have some future directions. So as we lead into that, I'll kind of give you mine as an example. I kind of base a lot of things, grew up as a kid of some educators who grew up around my parents were in K-12 education, both as teachers and as coaches, and then just kind of the house, you know, everything was expected. You learn, this is how you do things, this is how you continue to develop, and then just being around school. So if you kind of follow some apprenticeship of observation theory and how people and students can indirectly learn about the education process just by observing teachers. You know, oftentimes kids of teachers, they live it even before they become a teacher. So a lot of those ideals are kind of there, even, you know, just learned indirectly from me. And certainly I've been around a lot of very impactful coaches and co-workers and people that I've worked for that I really kind of take some things from them and put it into my teaching and coaching philosophy. And then certainly study. I think you can never, as a teacher, you can never stop learning and studying. Learning different content, obviously, but then different teaching methods, different instructional cues, and different delivery standards. Okay, so this is kind of my background and kind of what I kind of base everything on. In regard to the framework, okay, so I kind of typically follow what's called a whole part whole approach. So a whole part whole would be basically I'm going to introduce a topic as a whole to provide context. As an athlete, maybe I see how that skill fits into a bigger picture of the game. Or as a student, I'm going to introduce a topic, and they're going to know exactly where that fits. Whether it's, let's say I'm talking anatomy, and I talk about the major structure and movers of what that muscle group does, and then I go a little bit more in specific into that different area, or how a process works as a whole in the body, and then you can get back down to the different areas. But the whole part whole, once you introduce the whole, then you get down to the nuts and bolts of that area, called the part, and then you reintroduce the whole again. So you provide context of whatever you're talking about in the big picture. You then talk specifics. You base all that in solid evidence. You provide quality learning experiences in regard to lecture content. You maybe activities, things of that nature where they can collaborate and work with other students, and then you reintroduce that small little set back into the bigger picture. So whole part whole. If I'm on the field, it's the same kind of deal. If I'm demoing a movement in the weight room, it's going to be the same deal. I'll show the full movement, then I'll break it down by steps, and then I'll follow up with the full movement, and I'll expect the students and the athletes to kind of do the same way. Okay. Also, when I'm thinking from a principle-based approach as a teacher and as a coach, I'll follow what's called a modified PCTK framework. Okay, so in 1986, Schulman kind of talked about this idea of a PCK framework. So as a teacher, we should have two different types of knowledge. We have a pedagogical knowledge, which is basically knowledge of delivery, knowledge of providing feedback, knowledge of just assessing what's going on in my classroom. And then I should have CK, or content knowledge. Content knowledge is my big knowledge about what I'm actually talking about, so the content that I'm delivering. So a couple examples. So pedagogical knowledge would be, like I mentioned, how I'm going to talk, how I'm going to deliver content to the students. Okay, if I'm on the field, pedagogical knowledge would basically be my observation or feedback that I'm going to provide. So like I'm watching a sports skill, maybe I look on this side, I check a 45-degree angle, then I hit to the other side, and then I provide specific feedback based on what they do. That's pedagogical knowledge, having the ability to deliver a message and then provide feedback. The content knowledge, let's say I'm a science teacher, we're talking physical science about space maybe, okay? My content knowledge would be the knowledge, the specific X's and O's about the outer space in the solar system. Okay, if I'm on the field, or let's say I'm a wide receiver coach or an infield coach or a basketball coach, my content knowledge is basically the nuts and bolts of what I'm doing on the field, maybe the tactics, the technical aspects of what I need to be teaching. Okay, so what Schulman used to do was couple PK and CK together, and he called it a PCK framework. Okay, then Mercer and Kohler in about 2006 came up with what we call PCTK. So that adds T, or technological knowledge. Okay, so technological knowledge is basically using technology to supplement the instructional model. Okay, so is it through assessment? You can do it as a medium of providing content, maybe a follow-up on a phone or an online platform, but that technical knowledge basically is going to help us deliver that content. I tend to like to follow what I call a modified form of a PCTK. So the first one is the pedagogical knowledge. I want to put so much value in the interaction and the delivery with the student, with the athlete, that I have a great relationship with them. In my mind, I don't think that learning is going to take place if there's not a great relationship there. That doesn't mean that it's super close. That doesn't mean that I'm their friend. That just means that there's a great relationship. I understand the needs of that person. I understand their strengths, their weaknesses, and we can find a great middle ground on how to deliver that content. Same thing on the field. I know their strengths, their weaknesses, what we need to work on, and I know exactly how to deliver a message. So that, for me, P goes first. Pedagogical knowledge comes first. The next one would be content knowledge. As a teacher, as a coach, if I don't know my stuff, people aren't going to respect you. I think of the most things, especially in the athletic community, athletes want to know how you're going to help them get better. Okay, how are you going to help me succeed on the field, maybe even get to the next level? In the classroom, it's the same way. Students want to know that teachers know their content. Okay, so content knowledge comes next. I need to be an ever-growing student of the game. I need to be learning my content. I need to be making sure that I'm taking care of my content knowledge so that when I get into the classroom, when I get out on the sport field, on the weight room floor, I'm delivering impactful knowledge that's making my students and my athletes better. And the last one for me is the technological knowledge, and that's just having the ability to utilize technology in a dynamic setting. Okay, so for us in a sports setting, how do I use monitoring tools to assess what's going on the field? How do I use computers, cameras to provide feedback to athletes based on their performance? If I was in the classroom, how do I have just a banging presentation so that everything that they see is very interactive, and they grasp that and they see it and they're very interested in what we're doing? So technology comes next. You put all that together, PCTK knowledge, and that's how you develop your lesson, your content, how you're going to deliver it. That's a great framework that I tend to follow. That comes from Schulman and then later Mercer and Kohler. Okay. Now in regard to assessment, I think there's three different areas. I think before I even get to that, I do think that as teachers and as coaches, we got to be very careful on how we grade and provide feedback in regard to an assessment. Okay, so sometimes it's really easy just to chalk it up and grade people against a national standard or a norm. Okay, and that's important, especially as we get up there, but there's other areas too. A couple things we need to talk to them about and look at, and grading them is one, intent and initiative toward mastery. Like, what kind of effort are they providing toward mastery? Effort is not everything, but it's a big part of the game. Okay, I have to be intentful. I have to move intentional in order to master a skill. I just don't ooze through the motions and learn a concept. Okay, I need to be intentional in action. Are my students, are my athletes being intentional in what they're doing? Okay, the next one is basically like the progress of understanding a new skill, progress of understanding the X's and O's of a scheme, or progress of understanding what is occurring within a unit plan. Okay, where is the student on the spectrum of average, below average, above average? Are they mastering the content? Are they not mastering the content? Okay, and then the final one would be, how are they progressing against their baseline? So let's say I have an athlete come in and I put them in a weight room at a certain level. After that first year, where are they? They shouldn't be at the same level. They should be progressing. Okay, over a career, if you do it over time, they should be progressing. They should be trending upward. Same thing in the classroom. Where are students based upon where they were coming in at the very beginning? So also with assessment should be a self-reflection for the coach or teacher as well. Okay, at the end of the day, when I assess what's going on, I should look back at myself. Now, I tend to believe that we should probably do this at the end of a semester, at the end of a training block, at the end of a season, when we can just kind of step away and look at it from an unbiased and an unrushed perspective. But I should be looking at, are my athletes improving based upon the delivery, the content that I'm giving them? If I'm in the classroom, are my students getting good marks based upon where I thought they were? Because if not, either the content is too hard, they're not interested in learning the content, or it's been delivered poorly by me. Okay, so I need to be looking back at that. Assessment is not just for the students, it's for me as the educator. Okay, the final little thing I want to kind of talk about is inclusion. Everybody deserves an opportunity to learn. If somebody is interested in learning a skill, whether it's on the field, whether it's in a classroom, they deserve an opportunity to be exposed to it and have a fighting chance. Okay, so in order to do that, we need to kind of think about a couple different things. And the first one would be kind of modifying delivery. Okay, all learners are different. All learners are different. Okay, you're going to have basically people that learn in more of a psychomotor approach with hands-on, moving in space. Some people need to see it. They're visual learners. Some people you can just tell them and then they go. An interesting thing, especially about elite athletes, once we teach something, oftentimes they can just copy it by seeing. As a coach does it and demos it, they can quickly kind of do it on their own. But with that, we need to think about how we're going to modify the delivery. Do I need to have a handout? Do I need to have a visual? Do I need to show it? Do I need to talk through it? Can I do them all? I need to have the ability to modify it over time. The next one would be having remediation or review opportunities. Okay, as a teacher, as a coach, am I providing ample time for practice? Okay, so I'm providing information, we're introducing this new skill, this new content. What does the lesson look like where they're going to actually improve? I need to maybe put them first in a situation where they can practice it in a low stakes environment, then maybe collaborate with someone else, turn up the speed a little bit, or turn up the content or speed at which it needs to be done. And then maybe you introduce them back into a high stakes environment. But the biggest thing there is, are there opportunities for practice? If the skill is not there, if the knowledge is not there, is there opportunities to come full circle back around and continue working on that? Knowledge is like a scaffold, like you're building a house, and I put some scaffolds and I go to the next level, and I go to the next level. Knowledge and skill development is just like these scaffolds. Okay, I can't go to the next level unless I have the foundational knowledge. We want to provide remediation, and that's not a bad thing. Remediation is not a bad thing. I want to provide opportunities to grow over time, to scaffold more knowledge, more skills on top of one another so we can grow. Okay. Then the final one, it kind of ties into what I was just talking about, but using the idea from Gardner and the multiple intelligences. Okay, so everybody has a different kind of idea, and everybody has different interests, different skill sets, and certainly different backgrounds. Sometimes you may have someone that's really interested in like music and they have a lot of rhythm. You can have a visual learner, you can have verbal or logical, mathematical type people. Okay, how are we using these different things to help their learning experience? So going back to this differentiated education idea, every one of our learners is going to be different. Every one of our athletes on the field is going to be different. How are we getting to them? I got to know their needs. I got to know them. It goes back to the pedagogical idea and understanding my athletes and understanding my students. I got to have a great relationship. What is their strengths? What is their weaknesses? What kind of intelligences do they lean more toward? Are they all about rhythm? Are they all about seeing things? Are they more math oriented and numbers driven? Okay, I can tailor what I do to help them. Okay, student learning often is a direct product of teacher behavior. Okay, so how can I change my behavior in order to impact their student learning? Okay. The last one, just kind of thinking about some different directions. I want to continue to grow as a teacher, and I want to be a great role model. I think the biggest thing that we can do is to be a great role model for our students, for our athletes, and everything that we do. Continually working on the person, continuing to show them great habits in regard to, being great to other people, holding other people accountable, being a great husband or a wife, a partner, okay, being a great father, a mother. As we do these things and we show great examples of what that may look like, everything else can kind of fall into place. At the end of the day, the relationship absolutely has to be there. And just personally speaking, with my philosophy, I think the interaction with the person and the environment and context which with that environment exists is going to be super, super impactful. Okay, so in review, when we build a coaching philosophy, when we build a teaching philosophy, a couple things that you can hit on. You don't have to have all of these, but this can guide you. Okay, what is your background? Why do you teach? Why do you coach the way you do? Okay, was it people? Did they impact you? Was it a situation? Did that impact you? Was it personal study? How did that work and build your background? The next one is framework. All right, so what is the framework in which you make decisions? Okay, do you just kind of spitball it by the situation? Do you follow a model? Do you have your own model? Okay, you could put that right in here. The next one, you want to address assessment. How are you going to assess progress over time of a student, of an athlete, of yourself based upon your teaching? And then finally, like inclusion, how are we going to get everyone learning? Everybody deserves a chance in some level. Now, it may not be elite level, it may not be low level, but everybody deserves an opportunity to learn. And then final directions, where you want to go with certain things. How are you going to, what's your bigger aim? Okay, what's your bigger mission beyond teaching, beyond the X's and O's of your game? Okay, really appreciate that. Just kind of talking a little bit, brainstorming about developing a coaching philosophy. It's been on my mind a lot here recently, and just kind of seeing some different videos out. I think there's a lot of good work out there, and I think the development of a coaching philosophy, a teaching philosophy for all of us can help continue to reinforce what we do with our students and with our athletes. Really appreciate it. Thanks.